we started our recording. How's everybody doing out there in virtual soccer land? My name is John Adams. I'm a regional director here with Number One Soccer Camps, and we're here to bring you our first ever virtual college coaches chat. It is Wednesday, May 13th. Hopefully everybody's staying safe and healthy. We got a couple of rock stars on the call today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell you guys a little bit about them, and we'll get into our question and answer period. We'll start with Nick up here first.
Interesting story. Head coach of Anna University closed down 2 weeks ago. And then yesterday I just took the position at Ashland University. So I'm the new head coach at Ashland University, NCAA Division II. So there you go, fellas. Interesting 2 weeks.
Yeah, I bet.
Thank you.
I bet. Right below you, Will Dyer. How's it going, Will? Unmute yourself first.
Hey guys, doing? I'm Will Dyer. I'm the head coach at Lawrence Tech University NAIA program up in Southfield, Michigan, which I started up from scratch in 2011.
Very good. Congratulations on that. Next up, Chris Legates.
Hey, Chris Legates, Southern Connecticut State University. I'm the assistant women's soccer coach there. Hard to believe, but this is my 29th year in college women's soccer. Yeah. So I look great. I started at the age of 5, so I'm 34 now.
Yeah.
And the gray in my beard has nothing to do with any of the players that I've had in the past. So, and it's a pleasure being here, John. Thanks for having me.
Chris, tell us a little about your podcast and what you got going on over there last few years.
Yeah. Thanks for the plug, John. Tackling College Sports at tacklingcollegesports.com. It's been 5 years now that we've been doing podcasts. We've had 38 of them. Actually recording number 39 tomorrow with Allison Foley, former coach of Boston College. The whole idea behind Tackling College Sports is to talk about the recruiting process. There's so much misinformation out there. You can go to a tournament and a showcase weekend and walk around the sidelines and hear all the misinformation. So what we've done is kind of synthesized it, got the right approach through honesty and transparency, and we've been able to put out 38, 39 good podcasts from coaches of all different sports about the recruiting process.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, it's a tremendous site. These guys do a really good job of getting that real information out there. And last and certainly not least, Coach Mike, how's it going?
Going very well, John. Thanks. I guess Chris says this is 31 years for me at doing this. And I shaved my gray off, because I can't get past that 3 week spot. And that was touching my face. I got itchy beard, so gone. Getting back in again a little bit. But I'm the head coach at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. Been there for 17 years and was at a few places before that. University of Rochester, Kenyon College, not far from Ashland University.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And Cleveland, I've been around. So pleasure to be.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys all do pretty well with our college ID camps across the country. So bringing everybody on, it's going to be a good. I've developed some questions that get asked often. Some new questions brought on by the quarantine that we've been all going through in our lives, and that's where I'm going to start here. First question up for grabs, guys. With this NCAA dead period, it's approaching 2 months, and it looks like it's going to be longer than this. There's no showcase tournaments, no games and such. What can players be doing to get on coach's radar that are not already there? Who wants it first?
Go, Mike. Chronological order. I would say that hasn't changed tremendously other than our ability to see players play. But, I mean, the first part of that usually is to send an email to the coach, a personalized email. And then you go from there. You put your GPA and a little bit about yourself and hopefully a little 1 minute, 2 minute video if possible, but those aren't the end all either. So don't worry about it if you don't have a video. But I would say now more than ever, it's important to get those emails out and let coaches know you're interested. We're all in this at the same level with we can't see you play. Maybe we'll see you play in August, maybe September, maybe later. But that's the best you can do now, and be persistent about sending well thought out emails to coaches.
Yeah.
Personalized email, personalized. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
So yeah, personalized emails. I think good. As Mike said, I like videos. If we can get a first couple of minutes of a video in there. Questionnaires are important. I think we all have questionnaires linked to our college where they get into our Front Rush or whatever it is database. So I always direct people into that, and then obviously, hopefully, get into the fall and what have you, when to see these kids play live. But yeah, absolutely, same thing as Mike, really.
All right, Chris, where are we going to go from there?
I was just going to say, and Nick kind of just touched on it a little bit. We always talk about it personal. Make sure you get the coach's name right. Make sure you get the school right. I'm sure all of us have been in that boat before where we've received an email from a potential student athlete that just has the wrong name or has the wrong school or both. That's a good way to get yourself off the list pretty quickly. But I think one of the variations because of the pandemic right now is maybe you are making videos of yourself training on your own right now. So, where you have the opportunity to go back and look at matches, what about right now? So are you spending the time doing the workouts that your club coaches or college coaches or whoever is sending you? And you have the opportunity right now to film those and send those as well. Communication, as all of us know, is probably one of the most important things in college recruiting, because we don't have staffs of 10 people. Majority of players that I think we all deal with are at times fallen off of radars or fallen between the cracks. So a lot of the recruiting has to be done by the student athlete themselves. So I think at this juncture in time during a pandemic, you should be keeping communications of every 2 weeks or so with a college coach. And it could be a variety of things. And I know one of the questions you're going to ask, John, is some of those maybe out of the ordinary things you can do. Well, right now, I think one, as far as video is concerned, is showing yourself doing training exercises, individual work on your own in your backyard, or if your state or town is allowing you to go in there. So
I think these three coaches made some great ideas, some great suggestions. The other thing I'd recommend highly is get rid of the BCC. I can't tell you how many emails we receive from international recruit, from local kid that just says, "Hey, coach," and it's not personalized. Got to be personalized. We're giving you money. We want you to come play for us. It's a job interview. Treat it like that.
We want you guys to stand out. I think that the personalized video at the, what you're doing now, I think that's going to be a big time thing. It'll get you to stand out. I mean, I haven't received any, hey, I'm working out here type videos. What am I spending my last 3 months doing? I'm working out. I think that could get people to stand out and stand apart from the crowd. So, yeah. So next, go ahead. Yeah. Free flowing discussion.
Yeah. I was thinking about, what Chris was saying about personalized video, the training videos. And I remember years ago, I recruited this kid from Germany, and I recruited him by watching his training video, and he was just doing simple stuff. And I thought, God, this kid is really good technically. And anyway, he came for a year and then went back home, and he's still playing pro for underhacking right now. Unbelievable. But it really was on his training video. It was unbelievable. I was watching him strike a ball and control it, and you could just see from the training video he's a high-level player. And not many kids do that. We don't get much of that. But I remember that the German companies seem to do that a little bit, I think. And I've always enjoyed that aspect of them. I've always thought it was a good idea.
I can't speak for everybody else. I would be amped if I got a recruiting video from a kid lifting cinder blocks, putting water in jugs and doing curls. Rocky IV type of stuff where he has to go in the woods and chop trees. Because listen, we know that they don't have gyms they can go to right now because most of that's closed. But what out of the box mentality is a kid using to train? I'd be pretty psyched. Imagine if I saw a kid, with 2 cinder blocks on the end of something doing, bench pressing or anything that's out of the ordinary would be really interesting to see. So thus far, I don't know about the other coaches. Thus far, I haven't seen anything like that. That's been really out of the box, out of the ordinary, that you'd be like, wow, that's like Rocky IV chasing a chicken to try to catch, that kind of thing. So.
If anybody want to chime in, anything you guys have seen in this quarantine that's been super creative?
Personally, a handwritten letter. It's a funny point, but I mean, you guys, we never get these things anymore, but if somebody writes me a handwritten letter, I always will read it because somebody's taking some real time there. So I always tell, when I do these recruits, I always say, hey, write a handwritten letter to a coach, make it detailed.
That's great. That's great.
Just an idea.
What are you guys looking for in players today?
For me, I want someone that excites me the way my wife did when I first met her. When I see them on the field, I want to be excited. I want to be turned on. It just depends for me position-wise. Defender, I want to see him in the air. I want to see him win 1v1. Center mids, I want to see 4Rs. I want to see receive, release, retain, repeat. Forwards, I want to see him score goals. I want to see him get back and hustle back on D. Goalkeeper, great distribution, left and right, so forth. But for me, it's got to be a lot of heart. I'm a technical school, so it's mostly engineers and architects. So if you want one of those two majors and you can play, I'm going to come after you.
Mike, what are you looking for in a player? What's your optimal?
Well, I think it has to be all around, combined with is it an academic fit? All of our schools have a certain type of student athlete we're looking for. So the right fit for us, and then, of course, athleticism. Everybody wants athletes. The combination, though, like Bill was saying, you got to be able to pass and receive the ball. You got to be able to hit a ball. An all-around player, but also then when we get, some of us get 200, 300, 400 kids very interested in a year, and whatever that number is, then it becomes, there's a lot of good soccer players, but who is a guy who stands out from the crowd as far as being a good guy? Initial impression in everything you do in life obviously is critical, and then to carry on with how responsive are you with emails, how accountable are you, but when it comes to like initially seeing a kid in a video, do you stand out like the other coaches say? Handwritten letter, yeah, great way to stand out. Anything you can do to separate yourself from the crowd. But part of it certainly in the college game today is athleticism. You can be not the greatest athlete, but you better be incredible technically. So, you have to have a combination of a lot of things.
I was going to say, John, I think first and foremost, clearly it's always technical and tactical ability, but more so now in this day and age, and again, being kind of a dinosaur doing this now, character has become very important, okay? And the reason I say that is all of our jobs are contingent upon 18 to 22-year-old kids behaving themselves on college campuses. So I think it really is critical that you get to know the student athlete or the prospective student athlete way deeper than you had to 10 and 15 years ago. Why I think that's important and why the character is, listen, you want to go to a game and watch a kid and they're all crowding the referee after a call. That's one of the things that annoys me the most now in the modern game, is that every referee call has some type of dispute involved with it. Is the kid able to play with their teammates? I pass the ball to you, John, you have a bad touch and I've given you the hand, or I've waved you off, instead of working hard to maybe counter press and receive the ball back again. Am I giving the coach a hard time? So I think there's little things that we have to go even a little deeper than we did 10 and 15 years ago, where you just judged kids on ability, where now character is very important. Because listen, I don't want to get a call on Monday morning from the dean of students saying that X player gave me a hard time, gave security a hard time on Friday and now has been written up, because ultimately that's a reflection on me. Okay, I brought this kid here. So I think you have to do a little more due diligence than you used to make sure a kid's character is good. And some of that can go as far as looking at their social media, calling their guidance counselor. Every club coach is going to tell you how good a kid is, but you might have to go a little deeper now, even maybe a teacher or someone who wrote a recommendation for the kid. Because like I said, I think this day and age, you don't want to get called into the athletic director's office or the dean of students office because one of your players that you didn't properly recruit or do the due diligence has now caused a problem that now is a reflection on you.
Yeah, that leads me to my next thing. What are you guys doing to do your due diligence? You said you talked about social media. Nick, what are you looking for in a player, and how are you doing that background stuff on him?
Well, I mean, I'm the head coach at Urbana. I always took the lead on recruiting because I always enjoy that part of it. So my whole thing was, particularly with our roster was half American kids, half international kids. With the international kids, I'd always go overseas and spend, sometimes not even to watch them play. Most of the issue was I'd go over there and sit with the families and sit with the kids and try and make sure that they were the right fit. And, I think like Chris was saying, Mike was maybe saying, we were a very blue collar type of school at Urbana. We're totally different from McKenna, and I think Mike will appreciate that. And so I had to find the niche and the right kid that would fit in there. So it was always, for me, it was always trying to dig into their personality, yes, through social media, but more with the meeting the parents, meeting the family people, spending time with them, trying to get an idea of the support that they have around them. And anytime I've had any doubts of kids, most of the time they've usually turned out to be true. A big kid that after a year or so. So my thing is always to be for me as a head coach, I always took the lead in recruiting and spending time with the kids, and it's important to spend time with them. So you make sure that, because there's lots of good players out there, especially when you're giving scholarship dollars away, right? I mean, there's lots of them, but you've got to find the right fit for your program. And Ashland may be a different situation. I've been in for the last 12 years at Urbana, I don't know. But, yes, I think for me, it's the personal contact, it's the spending time with those kids and maybe their family members to get a good read on the kid. Absolutely.
Awesome. Anybody else have any ways there? I'm a club coach as well, and I feel calls and emails, not a ton, but enough about my current players. Are you guys talking to the club coaches? Are you talking to the high school coaches to kind of use that as a buffer? What are you guys doing in that framework?
I do it. I think a lot of us probably do it when we get a little further down the line. It's usually the spring is the time to identify talent, and then to take it to the next level, like Nick was just saying, and try and get to know the families. And one thing I was going to say about that, when a kid, now nobody's walking in our offices now with their mom or dad to talk to us when they're looking at the schools, but that's going to come down the pike at some point, whether it's August, September, October. And there are so many times where that initial visit becomes a turnoff because mom or dad does too much talking for the kid. Yep. And you kids might not realize that because you have one mom or one dad and you know how they behave and you think that that's normal. But know that when you're talking to a coach face to face, don't let your mom or dad do all the talking, because I think there's a lot of guys like myself that can be a real turnoff. It's a sign of a lot of things, not many of them good. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward, I think.
Well, what could coaches at the club and high school levels do to help that process out? It's obviously when they talk to us and mom or dad is talking, not every kid's accustomed to it. A lot of these times these kids have these parents have their spokesperson for, the first 15, 16 years of their lives. And now we're asking them to, hey, I want you to talk to me personally. And it's a tough time for these kids. So what can you guys, any advice you guys can give on that aspect of it on, when, before they get to you guys?
I'll tell you what, John, you and I have spoken about this many times, and I agree with you. I think clubs have to do maybe a better job of educating of what the real, and I'm using the word real, opportunities are in college soccer for players. And what I mean by that is, and I can't speak for every club, and I'm not targeting every club, but there are clubs that promise that every kid will get a scholarship, come to our club, and you'll get on the top teams. But we know from the data that there's just not this endless well of money available for kids to get. And what happens is I think they're often sold on those things, that my investment in club soccer will pay off on the back end in a scholarship. But Division I men's soccer has 9.9 total scholarships. Division I women's soccer has 14. So when you look at this, do the math. You can't, and that's if the school subscribes to be fully funded, which a lot aren't. So what I think happens is clubs aren't doing a good enough job just educating that one point. That would change a lot of people's viewpoints on things. That maybe at the age of 14, my daughter is good, but at 18, how is she going to be? And is she going to get a scholarship? Well, the likelihood of getting a full scholarship somewhere, it's next to zero. Okay. We could show the data. It's 1%, 2%, whatever. But on the flip side, I think what you're seeing, and this is a good question about going forward from here, by the way, after this pandemic ends. After 9/11, parents became the hover, the helicopter, this and that. What's going to happen now after, when the dust clears from this? We don't know the answer to that yet. But what I think is important to recognize is there has to be a way, and we have to find a way that parents can integrate in the process. We have to bring them in the process. I'm old school. I always was like, hey, coach, player, parent. But I think nowadays, one, it's a customer service business, customer service oriented business, but we have to find a way to integrate parents. But to the parents, you're not the kid's agent. So what I love about what Mike was saying, I've known coaches who the head coach takes the prospective player away and the assistants deal with the parents. And I think that's the way, it should be, because I want to get to know the player as the head coach. I want to get to know the player. And then just the last part for me, as far as the parent part is, I think clubs have to be more transparent about opportunity. And this is not a knock, trust me. And we're dealing player. First of all, how many clubs even talk about NAIA schools or junior colleges? Okay. Those are tremendous opportunities for players to play. And Mike is at one of the best Division III schools in the country, and one of the best, maybe the best conference in the country. And we know that those schools that are in Mike's conference can play with Division I teams. But there's such a tunnel vision of I have to play Division I soccer to make it validate all the money I've spent in Premier and validate my ability as a player. But I can tell you, and this is not a knock, no way, because I spent 20 years coaching Division III with you, John. 97% of the players that I deal with are Division III players. And for God's sake, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't know why it's all of a sudden become like a scarlet letter. But there's nothing wrong with that, man. All right, I'll get off my
No, that's a good transition. So what I wanted to talk about is Will, you're NAIA, correct?
Yes.
All right. So can you talk about what NAIA is? It's something I'm not familiar with at all. Give us the lowdown on what's going on in the NAIA level.
So NAIA is pretty much smaller university and colleges, a lot of them being church-based given universities, technological universities, so forth, liberal arts and so forth, but they're more designed for players looking for that specific major. For me, for example, engineering. To go down the street, Madonna University, which is largely church-based, Christian faith, and so forth. That comes into play with these student athletes and so forth. And with us in the NAIA, the great thing is we do offer athletic and academic scholarships. Every university is different. At Lawrence Tech, I have 12 full athletic scholarships, but I have 2 teams. I have a first team and I have a reserve team. So I have 50 to 55 total players. 2 other schools in my conference, Indiana Tech, they have 3 teams. They have 70 to 80 players to divide amongst those 3 teams. UNOH, University of Northwestern Ohio, he probably has about 60 kids, so forth. So each NAIA school is different. NAIA is more enrollment driven based on their student athletes. Like in 2011, we had 3 sports. We had men's soccer, we had women's volleyball, and we had men's club ice hockey. Now we have 26. We've added football, which that's been fun to deal with, so forth. But the NAIA, that's a great thing. You've got to look and see if they offer the academic, the athletic, and at LTU, we stack our scholarships. So we have our own private academic scholarships, 3.0 or higher GPA, 24 or higher on the ACT, so forth, similar to D3. And then we'll take that, and let's say it's 10,000, and I'll give the kid another 10 in academic. That's my offer, so forth.
I mean, it sounds like a heck of an opportunity for, I mean, you get a school with 60 soccer players. I mean, that's amazing. So, you know, if these kids are willing to play and willing to get a solid education and go for you know, money that, you know, they're not going to have to pay back, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Nick, Ashland's Division 2, correct?
Division 2, and Urbana was Division 2 also, yeah. So really along the same lines, really, I think, you know, I think maximum scholarships, D2 is 9 scholarships. Again, you can do the math with that. You know, at Urbana, I only carried about 25 kids. One of the things that I do, and, you know, Will touched on this, and I tell kids is when you know, when we're recruiting in the process, is you have to be a little bit careful. Because a lot of kids do end up at schools that have 3 teams, for example. Like, for example, you know, Tiffin University, which are an Ohio school, they carry 90 kids, 3 teams. So a lot of this stuff is enrollment driven. And so when kids get recruited, they need to understand that they could end up at a school and think they're going to get on the varsity team when they get there, and they end up being on the 3rd team and training away from the varsity team, those type of things. So I always warn kids to be aware of that. And you get a lot of that in the Division 2 world. I won't have that at Ashland. I think they have a fairly small roster, but it is out there a lot, and it does present a lot of opportunities. And it does, as you said, John, some kids are quite happy with that, to go and play on the reserve team and get some scholarship money and have that experience. I get that. But there are a lot of kids that need to be a little bit careful if they want to get that high level of soccer, and they end up going somewhere because they're attracted to a program, an enrollment-driven school, and some promises may get made, and then sometimes they don't always work out. So you're going to be a little bit careful, and you get a lot of that Division 2. But otherwise, Division 2, small private schools, a lot of the time there are state-funded schools too. Good standard of play. You know, at Urbana, I was in the Mountain East Conference with the University of Charleston, who have won the national title, I think, 3 out of the last two or three times in the last sort of 5 years. And you know, they can play with anybody in the country, no doubt. But also you have programs, Division 3, that can do the same. I know Mike over there, and then, you know, in our neck of the woods, Jay Martin, Ohio Wesleyan, those teams are always top notch. They could play most Division 1 teams and give them a real run for the money. So, you know, kids, the point is made. You can find a good standard of soccer wherever you go. And there's a lot of opportunity out there for kids to play, whether it's D1, D2, D3, NAIA, and even JUCO, right?
And I think that the way that I would advise a kid to find the right fit, the right level, you know, there's so many questions to ask the coaches, but I think the important part is for kids to take ownership in that recruiting process and ask questions. Don't be afraid of what the answer might be, but don't be afraid to ask questions and know what you're getting into, and ask the right kinds of questions and be involved. And you know, we get so many emails from kids after we're done recruiting for a year. You know, I'm still getting emails today of kids saying, "Hey, I just decided I'm going to Trinity. Here it is, the beginning of May. I decided I'm coming to Trinity. Looking forward to playing soccer." And it's so hard for me not to type in, "No, you're not." You know, but of course I don't. But you know, you really want to play. You better get out in front of it and get involved in the process.
All right, next up on the question list is what are your real thoughts on these huge weekend showcase tournaments, whether they be national events, regional events? What are your real thoughts? Let's start flipping a coin. Let's start with Nick.
Yeah, obviously I think we all have our, issues with the amount of times the kids play and how the standard may start pretty good on Friday, and then by the time you get to Sunday night, it isn't good. There's ones I enjoy. I go to Disney every year. I love it. Great complex, floodlights. But I do think my biggest thing is the standard. For me, there's way too many leagues. There's way too many different levels, and the competition level is becoming so diluted. I talked about this recently. When I grew up in England, in the area of Manchester, there was only really one type of league, and everybody played in that league in the first or the second or the third division, and all the games were within 25, 30 miles, and the standard was really good, and it really meant something to win the league. And those games were ferocious on a game-by-game basis. I think the biggest problem that we have as college coaches is while sometimes it stands okay, I think it's very diluted, so I think it varies from game to game, and I don't think kids really get tuned into the intensity of what's needed to play at the college level. And that means that we're going to go into our college season, and we've got 18 games, and we can't afford to lose any games. And I don't think they grasp that concept when they come out of a club system that's very, very diluted, and the showcase is a part of the problem. But budgets aside, the fact is, if I can go and spend 3 or 4 days at Disney, I can see a lot of kids and get the bang for my buck and my recruiting budget and all the other bits and pieces. So it's a double-edged sword. But that's my thoughts about that. The showcase.
All right, who wants it next? Go ahead,
I'm
Will.
just going to say, I'll jump in and say here that I think because there's so many matches, these tournament weekends sometimes are up to 5 games. I agree 1,000,000% with what Nick said. Here to that. What I think has happened is that players have become desensitized to losing. Okay, because there's always another match in 20 minutes, in 2 hours, and if you remember, like Nick saying when he grew up, and same thing. If you lost a match on Sunday, you had a whole week to think about it because you didn't play until the following Sunday. And you know what? Your coach was getting on you. You were getting on each other. And you sure as heck didn't want to lose that game the next Sunday because you didn't want to go through another week of that. So I think there's too many matches. There's not enough training. I do think that, and again, I've seen it locally. I've seen it nationally, where you go to watch these tournaments, and it really feels like 3/4 of the kids, it's a chore or a burden for them to be there. Okay. And like Nick said, by Sunday, forget it. I mean, it's not useful to watch because attrition, it's the kid's 3rd match in 24 hours, which physiologically we know is a disaster anyway, but it's not attractive soccer. So there's not much to take out of Sunday. You're hoping Saturday you can get some good bits and pieces out of it. But to me, I think there's too many. There's not enough quality. Yes, you can find little things that you're looking for, but you got to get back to the mentality. And I know AAU basketball went to, why have a loser's bracket? Why, when you lose, you should just go home. Let them think about it. Let them think about why you lost, or the mentality of playing on the blacktop or playing pickup. Hey, you lose? Well, guess what? There's 7 other teams waiting to get on, and I'm not going to play for another 2 hours. So I think kids are a bit desensitized to losing, which at the college level, as we know, every single match is important. Every single match is important. And kids, they need a year from their freshman to sophomore year. They almost need that year to get acclimated to that because club hasn't prepared them for that. I guarantee you that 99% of the clubs haven't prepared them for that. I mean, I think about, and I go back because Mike's local, I think about what it must be like to play a NESCAC game every 2 days or 3 days. Those games are battles, man. So how do you deal with a kid that's desensitized to losing? The kid's just not going to play.
All right, who's up next? Will, you want to take the next shot at these showcases? What do you think of them?
I think I don't have Nick's budget or some of these guys' budgets to go down to Disney. But I do think this past fall there was a perfect, or this past late winter, early winter, I should say. You had Disney, you had ECNL down there, you had National League, you had all these things going on and created a perfect storm, because I know Oakland University, Coach Pogue, Eric Pogue, he was down there for like 3 weeks recruiting and so forth. Now, for me, the big tournaments that I go to, obviously Crossroads in Indiana, Ohio Elite down in Cincinnati, and so forth. That I try to do, and then I try to have other coaches that I know take a look at a kid at these events for me. So it's a little different in my boat. I just can't afford to go down there. So I'll stay a little bit local and concentrate on word of mouth coaches that I know in video.
And Mike, what's your recruiting plan look like up at Trinity? What are you going to these tournaments? Your assistant's going. What are you doing?
My assistant goes to 70% or so. We both go to San Diego together. He goes to Disney, Potomac, Jeff Cup, the ECNL showcase in Florida, which I think this year Zach went to instead of Disney. There are so many tournaments. There's just so many. And our recruiting budget is limited, so we feel like we can't make mistakes. So I think it was Nick who said, bang for the buck, you got to get it. In all honesty, I would say 90% of the games that I see, 90% of the players look the same. And it's because it's 3 games in 3 days or 5 games in 3 days. The warm-up is horrible. You know, it's game after game after game after game, and the kids are fooling around on the side, and then they get, for 1 minute, they're going to do some running. The games are quicker usually, and sometimes they're not 90-minute games. So it's difficult. It's difficult. So, you know, you have to be creative. And then seeing a kid at one of these showcases is only hopefully one of the 4 or 5 times that we'll see him play. So they're not the end all, that's for sure. There are hundreds of coaches at some of these events. And in all honesty, a lot of the times the coaches are just fooling around on the sidelines and just talking to each other and not even watching the games. And, you know, so we try to, you know, sneak out and see some people play that maybe everybody isn't going to see play, and try and see a kid play. Like up at the Northwood School, we have a player coming from that school up in Lake Placid. I was the only guy who was at a game when I went up there and saw him play. Those of us that have been around for a while, we do have pockets of friends in different parts of the country that might recommend a player. And then I'll actually have friends go see kids play for me sometimes. So the showcases are there as the main events, and we all go to as many of them as we can and see some kids play, but they aren't the end all. I would say 50-60% of our players we saw at one of the big showcases. So there is a place for them, and we all need to find good players. But it's an interesting question, and it's an interesting discussion, because, you know, I think that the U.S. haven't improved much on a world ranking level in about 30 years. And I think part of the reason is because of the club soccer setup. Something has to change. And you know, there are tournaments every single weekend. So how do you pick which ones to go to? You know, you got to find a diamond in the rough here, a diamond in the rough there, a kid at a Disney or a San Diego Surf Cup, Dallas Cup, whatever, here and there. It's complicated. It's complicated.
For sure.
And
Go Nick, go.
I will say, just to piggyback on Mike there, some of the best kids I found are kids that aren't on those top level teams. there are kids that are kind of in between. You know, you might like the better players on a second team or something. And I've had 3 or 4 kids in recent years that have become really good players at the D2 level, playing at the top level, that really weren't on those top club teams at Disney, those type of places. And so coaches are always, and all these guys are, we're always looking between the cracks. We're always looking, you know, a league game here or there, or maybe instead of being at the main complex at Disney, maybe get off site and go to the second tier things. And you will find kids in those pockets that if you've got a good eye for them, you could, and I've had this a number of times, they've been some of my best kids, because those kids, they'll work for you. They'll come in and they will work for you. And so I've had a lot of success with a handful of kids there, and some of them, and very often, they're not the type of kids that they don't quit very easily, because, you know, they're willing to work for it. So Mike's right. You will find in between the cracks, you will find some real good players there.
You know, what I think Nick is saying is a really important point for kids and parents to listen to. And the reason I say this is we get so caught up, and I say we, meaning the kids and the parents, on going to the big club, the big club, the big club. We got to play, and we start getting caught in all these letters. We got to go play for AAA. We got to go play for BBB, whoever. But to me, if I'm an elite player on my smaller club team, or I'm the best player or one of the best players, I would stay there. I wouldn't go to the big time club with the big name, because if I'm the 14th player or 15th player on that team now, how does that help me at these kind of showcase tournaments? But if the system is maybe built around me, or I'm one of the key players or key components in the system, and I highlight or show myself more, but I'm not on the big field because I'm not with the big club, you're still going to get found. You're still going to be seen. And I think people get, and somebody will probably bash me somewhere about saying this, club isn't the priority. If I'm a kid looking to play, the coach is the priority. If I'm looking at a team to play for, I'm looking to see who that coach is, what their background and development is, and that's the term we throw around, but I mean that, development, and what kind of maybe network does that coach have outside of, because a lot of great coaches are coaching for small clubs that have just as many contacts as the $5,000, $6,000 a year club. I can still develop, and maybe now the system or the highlight of the team or the focal point is more on me than if I'm the 14th player at this big club paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 and wondering why nobody's contacting me. So I think what Nick is saying is a really important thing for people to listen to. We're all going to the fields on, not the stadium field, the outside field, the field 25, way far away, to try to look to where those players are. And what teams are playing on those ones? Smaller clubs. And I think kids need to try to stay where the coaching is good, and they should pick coaching over club.
Yeah, that's been quite the debate, and you know, the difference of the different clubs, and I think what people have to do is they have to define their goals early on, and then they need to do everything they can to attain those goals. Every decision they make, club, coach, their commitment level has to be towards those goals. You know, if your goal is Division I and to earn a scholarship, then everything you do has to be towards that, and with that in mind. So that's, you know, again, a really good point. So we're going to end on this though. What I want you guys to do is I want you to give one tidbit of information, of advice to, you know, the thousands of kids that are going to hopefully be watching this. Just give them one last piece of advice, and away we go. Let's start with Nick.
Well, I would say, you know, a lot of the kids, I tell them, you know, I've been helping place a lot of my kids that have been at Urbana that are now moving on, transferring out. One of the things I tell them is, like, you got to try and figure out a place where nobody have a good experience. The academics got to work. But if you want to play soccer, you got to figure out, you know, what's your priority. You want to play, then you got to try and go to a place where you're going to play. For many years, for 4 years, I was a director of coaching in California for a club called Santa Rosa United. We had a very good team, U17 team back then. I remember we had 2 kids on that team, and they were a lot of those kids were highly recruited. We had 2 kids. One kid ended up going to Yale, and his whole goal was he wanted to go to Yale, and he understood when he went to Yale that he probably wouldn't get on the field to his junior year. And he was fine with that. There was another kid on that team, and he was looking at these Division I schools. And I said to him, what do you want to do? He says, well, I really want to play from the start. And so he ended up going to John Hopkins, which I believe is a Division III school. And he had that experience where he played from the start. So both of those kids have different priorities, but they chose the schools that would be the best fit for them, and in terms of how they were going to get on the field and what their soccer experience would be like. So don't just go to a program to become the 26th player on the or on the second team or whatever it may be. Decide what you want to do, and then figure out how you're going to get on the field to play soccer. Because ultimately, I think that's what most soccer players would want.
Good.
So let's go back and let's go to Will now. Will, what's your piece of advice on the outer part of this?
When you're coming to visit us on campus and we invite you out, if I have another kid to show up and a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, I'm going to pretty much kick them out of my office. I want that recruit to actually dress up. I mean, we have to treat it as a job interview. That's my biggest thing. That shows me you respect yourself, you respect your parents, you're dressing to impress, just like a first date. Such. You're not an American football player, okay, where you just show up in big sweats and you just lounge it around. Shirt and a tie work great for me. Polo, khakis, even just as well. But that would be a piece of advice for me.
Awesome. Mike, go.
I think that kids should be humble when they arrive in the recruiting process, and also once you show up on campus. I think that your attitude and your behavior is the most important thing. And I would say at least half the kids have a tough time dealing with when they show up for preseason. There's 30 kids out there that were all the best players on their club teams, best player on their high school team. And I can only put 11 guys on the field. And you have to learn to deal with that. If, your attitude and your behavior, if you're not picked as a freshman, it's a different sport playing against 16 and 17-year-olds than it is playing against 21 and 22-year-olds. It's a different game. And, you better not think that you're the finished product as a 17 or 18-year-old when you show up to play at the next level, which it is. It's a different level. And so your attitude, your behavior, and your humility, as much as anything, are going to be huge assets for you moving forward.
All right, finish this off, Chris. What do you got?
I think it's like a Nike commercial. Like, what are you going to do when no one's watching? Only 7 or 8% of kids play high school or from high school or club play college soccer. Only 7 or 8%. Do you really love the game? Are you really willing to make a commitment to what college soccer means? Because you'll have no idea what it means until you get there. You'll think that club has prepared you. You'll think that high school has prepared you, and it hasn't. So what are you willing to give? You got to make a team, first of all, then to play on a team. What are you willing to do? Do you love the game enough to have your summers be about training and playing and weight training? Or do you want to go to the beach and do you want to hang out and play recreational soccer? Too many people think that college soccer is just an extension of club soccer. They couldn't be farther from the truth. So you have to ask yourself the question, intrinsically, do I really love soccer? Because I love when parents come and say, he or she wants it so bad. Do they? Are they willing to commit, to give up, okay, to sacrifice? Because you're going to have to do that when you get to these programs. And listen, if only 7% can do it, it's pretty friggin' hard. So to me, how much do you really love it? Do you really love the game?
Awesome. All good messages, guys. And, I really thank you all for taking the time out of your busy lives to come join us for, a little under an hour. I think it ended up being, I think my clock says 54. So, it's good. It's good to get you guys on. So much knowledge, so much wealth of experience with this crew. You guys coming from all over the country. So I really appreciate it. And signing off, number one talk camp, signing off. Thank you, everybody.